Om Tavakatam Ritam Tapta Jivanam Kavipiriditam Kalmashapam Sharavanamangalam Shrimadatatam Bhuvangiranantiye Burita Janaha. The nectar of your words, the praise of poet-seers, elixir to parched souls, delight to listening ears, cleanser of all sins, is great and glorious. They who spread it far and wide on earth are most generous. Well, good evening, friends. This evening we will continue with the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. For those of you who are following along in the book, we are on page 136, and we are halfway down. When we left off last week, the Master had just told the Brahmos and his other devotees that the Divine Mother is always playful and sportive. This universe is her play. She is self-willed and must always have her own way. She is full of bliss. She gives freedom to 1 out of 100,000. So she is self-willed and must always have her own way. We like to think otherwise. There's this idea, philosophical idea, between which the conflict between what is freedom and what is predestination. Well, here, if she is self-willed and must always have her own way, then we are talking about predestination. So what is this thing that we call human free will? Well, Swami Nikhilananda has an analogy describing what our free will is like. He says it's like a stick in the ground, and you as a cow with a rope attached to that stick, you have the freedom to do what you want within the length of that rope, to go around in a circle, to go in and out. But still you are restrained within that circle of freedom. Some will have more freedom and some will have less freedom. But still, God's will has kept you within the confines of those limitations. So do humans really have free will? We think we do. From our sense of ego, we think we have a certain amount of free will, but it's not that we can just haphazardly do anything we want, because we also know that we suffer the consequences. So that restrains how far we extend our free will. We know that, oh, the fire is nice and warm and toasty, we put our hands near there, we find comfort in that heat. But we also know that getting too close, we get burned. Too far away and we feel cold. So there's some happy medium. But then the intensity of the fire can go up and down. We have to feed the fire. So some work is required, even though we want this fire controlled. We don't want a big blazing thing that goes out of control. So still, even though we have the freedom to be with the fire and gain comfort from it, or be able to use the fire to cook food or to do some kind of work, still we understand that there are dangers associated with a fire. So we do not have free will to do whatever we want. If we start fires and it causes a lot of misery, causes death, well, we suffer the consequences of that. So we learn how to, we need to learn restraint. That's all within that circle of freedom. We understand, okay, the results of our actions. So when he says that The Divine Mother is free-willed and must always have her way. Well, her way means this idea of Rita, which means the laws of this universe, the laws of nature. So we are confined to those laws. So that has set the circle, the maximum size that this circle that we can operate in. And within that circle, some people have more or less freedom to act. Now a Brahmo devotee is asking, but sir, if she likes, she can give freedom to all. Why then has she kept us bound to the world? And the Master's reply is that is her will. She wants to continue playing with her created beings. Children, we like to, well, maybe girls more than boys. Well, I guess boys also. They will play with toy firemen and toy trucks and so forth. And girls will play with different dolls or so forth. But you can imagine that, well, I've also seen people play with toy soldiers, setting up an elaborate war scene, having different soldiers, and you try to pretend that you are one of the soldiers and you are moving forward and bringing your army with you. And so we play in these role model games. So the Divine Mother is like that. We are like these little soldiers, and she moves us around, and we suffer the consequences of wherever she moves us. So this is what she wants. She wants to play this game of creation. And we are the unfortunate pawns in that creation. And so wherever she moves us, then we either suffer or we enjoy. So the only real answer that the Master could give in this case is, well, the Mother, yeah, maybe she can grant freedom to everyone, but then the game is over. But she doesn't want the game to be over. She wants to continue playing. She wants to see what the creatures are doing. So she wants to continue playing with the created beings. In a game of hide and seek, the running about soon stops if in the beginning all the players touch the granny. Well, this is an allusion to, this is how they play hide and seek, I guess, in India, where everyone is blindfolded except the person who's the leader, and the blindfolded people, blindfolded kids, have to try to find the leader who ends up hiding after everybody's blindfolded. That's a different form of hide and seek that we would normally play, but still, everybody would normally close their eyes, and then the leader goes and hides somewhere, and then they open their eyes and start looking for that person. But here I seem to understand that, unless I'm told otherwise, that their eyes stay closed while they try to look for this leader. And the players, and there's a note down below, a footnote. The illusion is the Indian game of hide and seek, in which the leader, known as the granny, bandages the eyes of the players and hides herself. The players are supposed to find her. If any player can touch her, then the bandage is removed from his eyes and he is released from the game. Well, I'd like to play hide and seek this way. But so so he continues, or he says, in the game of hide and seek, the running about soon stops if in the beginning all the players touch the granny. So if the leader cannot go and hide fast enough and everybody touches them, then the game is over. So the Divine Mother does not want everybody to be free at the same time. then her game is over, her creation is over. So it's almost like the Divine Mother creates the universe, the creation goes on, and then she disappears. And now it's for us, in our own humble way, to try to find the Divine Mother. So if the game is all over, then that displeases her. Her pleasure is in continuing the game. Therefore, the poet said, and previously we had read a poem by Ramprasad, and he's just repeating a few lines now. Out of 100,000 kites, at best but one or two break free. And thou dost laugh and clap thy hands, O mother, watching them. If you were watching a game of soccer, how many times does that ball get kicked back and forth? And everybody sits on the edge of their seats waiting for a goal to be scored. But only when that goal is scored does everybody suddenly jump up in joy, or at least the fans for the team that has scored. So with great anticipation and joy, you're watching this game. But the real climax is when a goal is scored. And the final climax is when your team wins. Then you jump up in joy. So the Divine Mother wants to watch this game, and when you finally have scored, when you have finally been released from the kite, one of those kites, then she claps her hands in joy. Then the Master continues, it is as if the Divine Mother said to the human mind in confidence, with a sign from her eye, go and enjoy the world. How can one blame the mind? The mind can disentangle itself from worldliness if, through her grace, she makes it turn toward herself. Only then does it become devoted to the lotus feet of the Divine Mother. Well, so when we are born, the Divine Mother says, go and enjoy the world. And with our minds uncontrolled, we go and we try to enjoy, and we learn about controlling and restraining the mind. But the mind can also disentangle itself from worldliness if, by her grace, she makes it turn toward herself. But it is also said that even if you have the grace of God and have the grace of your guru, you can't succeed unless you have the grace of your own mind. So Sri Ramakrishna would, through an analogy, say that the wind of God's grace is always blowing, and so is the grace of your guru. But you still have to put up the sail of your mind to be able to catch that wind. Putting up that sail is your spiritual practices, reading the scriptures, thinking, and only then will you catch the full effect of that breeze and move forward in your spiritual life. So it's ultimately you may say that is the grace of God. That's how what Sri Ramakrishna just said. But the other side is also true, that we need the grace of our own mind, because the grace of God is always there. In other words, God wants us to be free, but God also wants us to put in the effort and the work. And in that sense, God has also not just created a world of attraction and suffering, but also He has provided the means from which we can realize Him. He's given us the divine incarnations. He's given us the seers and the saints, the scriptures, all the experience, but we have to be attracted to those kinds of teachings in order to realize what God is. So only then so how can one blame the mind? The mind can disentangle itself from worldliness if through her grace she makes it turn toward herself. Sometimes we want somebody else to do everything for us. A child expects the mother to do everything for the child. But when that child becomes an adult, that child would rather do things for themselves. The child will have its own dreams and aspirations to strive for. The mother has only provided a guide, certain etiquette, certain instruction how to survive in society. But after that, the child is on its child, having become an adult, is left on their own to see what they can make of themselves in the world. So she makes a turn toward herself. Only then does it become devoted to the lotus feet of the Divine Mother. Whereupon Sri Ramakrishna, taking upon himself, as it were, the agonies of all householders, sang a song complaining to the Divine Mother. Mother, this is the grief that sorely grieves my heart, that even with thee for mother, and though I am wide awake, there should be robbery in my house. Many and many a time I vow to call on thee, yet when the time for prayer comes round, I have forgotten. Now I see it is all thy trick. As thou hast never given, so thou receivest not. Am I to blame for this, O Mother? Hast thou but given, surely then thou hast received. Out of thine own gifts I should have given to thee. Glory and shame, bitter and sweet, are thine alone. This world is nothing but thy play. Then why, O blissful one, dost thou cause a rift in it? Says Ramprasad, thou hast bestowed on me this mind, and with a knowing wink of thine eye, bidden it, at the same time, to go and enjoy the world. And so I wander here forlorn through thy creation, blasted, as it were, by everyone's evil glance, taking the bitter for the sweet, taking the unreal for the real. The Master continued, men are deluded through her Maya and have become attached to the world. Then he repeats some of the lines from the song. Says Ramprasad, thou hast bestowed on me this mind, and with a knowing wink of thine eye, bidden it at the same time to go and enjoy the world. So this is a poem of lamentation that the Divine Mother has thrown us into the world with all the pleasure and the pain, knowing that that's what we would be experiencing. And then when we realize what it is, then we want to go back to her. But we have to realize what it is. At first we think it is all pleasure at first. Then we realize, no, there's also pain. But when it becomes more than we can handle, or we realize the futility of it all, then, only then can we wholeheartedly go back to the Divine Mother. And a Brahmo devotee is asking, Sir, can't we realize God without complete renunciation? So here the question has to do with, well, when we realize the futility of the things in this world, and we renounce the world, but yet we still have some sense of enjoyment, can we still live in the world without renouncing everything? And the Master with a laugh, of course you can. Why should you renounce everything? You are all right as you are, following the middle path, like molasses, partly solid and partly liquid. Do you know the game of knacks? And then there is a footnote. In the Indian card game of knacks, the object is to stay in the game by scoring under 17 points. Anyone scoring 17 points or more has to retire. And then he continues, having scored the maximum number of points, I am out of the game. I can't enjoy it. But you are very clever. Some of you have scored 10 points, some 6, and some 5. You have scored just the right number, so you are not out of the game like me. The game can go on. Why? That's fine. All laugh. So Ramakrishna is not encouraging everyone to renounce the world. He says, go on, enjoy the world, do your duties, but still keep your mind on God. I tell you the truth. There is nothing wrong in being in the world, but you must direct your mind toward God. Otherwise, you will not succeed. Do your duty with one hand, and with the other hold to God. After the duty is over, you will hold to God with both hands. We do our duty. We do our work, but we think of God. We offer the results, the fruits of our work to God. We try to make everything godly in our actions. The idea being, when we can no longer do that work, perhaps we become unable to, but yet more and more we hold on to God, so that when work is no longer required, no longer able, then the only thing left is to hold on to God. But if you haven't developed that habit throughout your life, then you will feel empty. You'll feel like you have been abandoned. You'll feel like there's nothing to hold on to. So you can't just say, only do work and have no interest or no inclination towards something higher. You always need to hold on to something higher, so that when whatever you're working on, when that is no longer available, either you've lost the ability to work, or you've lost a job, or you've lost your family, or you're about to lose your life, the only thing left to hold on to will be God. It's best to do that while you are still living and not wondering what's going to happen on your final days and you have nothing. So it is all a question of the mind. Bondage and liberation are of the mind alone. The mind will take the color you dye it with. It is like white clothes, just returned from the laundry. If you dip them in red dye, they will be red. If you dip them in blue or green, they will be blue or green. They will take only the color you dip them in, whatever it may be. Haven't you noticed that if you read a little English, you at once begin to utter English? You once begin to utter English words. And then he starts saying something. Foot, foot, it, mit. And with a footnote, the master was merely mimicking the sound of English. Then you put on boots and whistle a tune, and so on. It all goes together. Or if a scholar studies Sanskrit, he will at once rattle off Sanskrit verses. If you are in bad company, then you will talk and think like your companions. On the other hand, when you are in the company of devotees, you will think and talk only of God. So the mind takes the color of what you expose yourself to. If you think of God, if you think of the truth, if you think of infinity, your mind will be soaring above the finite aspects of this world, its limitations. And that is where the freedom is, the freedom for the mind to soar to the infinite. And that is really, yes, our actions while we are in this world are predestined, that's predestination. But it's not the freedom of our actions that is what being the definition of freedom, is that the mind becomes free, and in that freedom, it realizes its true nature. And in that true nature, it experiences God and God alone. So I will conclude with that in thought for today. So before I conclude with a chant, I just want to inform you that we have Swami Nikhilananda visiting us tomorrow, and he will be giving the Friday night class on the householder disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. I'm a bit confused right at this moment. I should have taken a note as to who he's going to be speaking about. It might either be Hazra or Hridoy. So please forgive me, but you will check our announcement. And this Sunday, there will not be any Sunday lecture here on our premises. We will be at the Tapovan retreat. There will be a memorial service to Swami Nikhilananda, who was one of our senior monks here at the Vedanta Society of Western Washington. And he passed away in January, and we will just this Sunday be having a memorial service for him. So I will conclude with a chant. Niranjanam nityam anantarupam bhaktanukampa tritavigraham vai Ishavataram paramesametyam tvam Ramakrishnam shirasa namamaha. We salute that Ramakrishna who is without blemish, eternal and infinite in forms, who has assumed human form out of compassion for the devotees, who is God incarnate, the Supreme Lord, and who is most worshipful. Om, peace, peace, peace to all beings.